welcome to episode 1 of the Ash Christine Designs podcast. My name is Ash and I will be your host. This is a podcast about knitting, crochet, and any other crafty adventures I get up to. I'm the designer behind the one-woman show I call Ash Christine Designs. I design mainly knitwear patterns, but there have been a few crochet ones as well. You can find any of my patterns on either Etsy or Ravelry. I'll have both linked in the description box below. I'm most active on Instagram as Ash Christine Designs and on Ravelry as Ash Christine. I also create stitch marker sets and progress keeper sets in my other Etsy shop, Vessel Stitch Co. If you're interested in checking any of this out, I will have everything linked in the description box below. I decided to start this podcast for a couple of reasons. One being I would love to be able to look back on my projects that I'm working on now, that they're still works in progress. I would love to be able to look back years later and see kind of my thoughts as I was working on them versus what my thoughts are now that it's a finished object and, all that fun stuff. Another reason I wanted to start this podcast is I don't really have any knitting groups in my area, so I'd love to be able to take this opportunity to really connect with other makers and kind of, form a community around just loving what you do. Like I said, I am fairly active on Instagram and in several Facebook groups, so I do have a connection with other makers, but I would just love to find a way to deepen that connection and be able to reach a lot more people that maybe aren't in the same circles that I'm in right now. So, a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Ash. I learned to knit in 2011 and I learned to crochet in 2013. So, I've been doing this whole thing since then. I started designing patterns coming up on 3 years this October, which I'm really excited about. I really got to do something special to mark that anniversary. I swear, some days it feels like yesterday that I first uploaded that pattern. It's crazy how time flies. Anyway, enough chatter. Let me move on to the talk that we all care about, the yarny stuff. I thought I would show you some recently finished objects to kind of give you an idea of what you can expect from this type of podcast and kind of the projects I'm going to be doing. Up first are these pumpkins, which I'm so excited about. This is a design that should be coming out in just over a week. This is my Hello Gorgeous pattern. It's knit out of worsted weight yarn and it uses US size 7 needles or 4.5 millimeter needles. It comes in 2 sizes. This is the large size and this has a slightly different pattern than the small one. I'll show you to compare them. Hopefully you can see that. I know that this one's quite dark, so sometimes it can be hard to catch it on the camera, but it is a slightly different stitch pattern. Yeah, that's a pretty good look. Like I said, these are knit out of worsted weight yarn, and honestly, they work up so fast. I just have a ton of these just sitting around my house now. It's okay. It's autumn. It's fine. And keeping with the autumn orange theme here, I just recently finished this headband, which I'm so happy with. I absolutely love this one. If you follow me on Instagram, you might remember that back in April I listed my Juliet pattern, which is a lace headband, which is one of my favorite patterns ever. And I love that design so much. I knew right away that I had to make a autumn version because what could be more fun? I knew I wanted to put an autumn spin on it, so I ditched the lace and I went for some cables instead. So I'm going to show you the back here, which is kind of more of that cable texture. This is the front. It's got a little bow on it. So cute. But the bow is actually detachable, so you can wear it this way as well. So this could be the top of the headband if you wanted. And I have to say, I'm really happy with the way that this came out. It's pretty much exactly what I was picturing. It was hard because, the Juliet pattern is totally lace, and so I was like, how do I translate that to, something autumn? And my first thought was cables, because what screams autumn more than something cabled? But I actually ended up swatching quite a few cable patterns because I wasn't entirely sold on a couple of them. A couple of them didn't work out stitch count wise and just didn't give that general look I was going for. Even though this one is intended for more autumn wear, so it's going to be a little bit warmer than the Juliet pattern, which is, kind of like a spring summer garment. This is actually one of the last skeins of yarn that I ever dyed back when I was running my hand-dyed yarn business. So this is knit out of Vessel Yarn Co. on the Inspire base. in the pumpkin pie colorway. And I swear, every time I work with my yarn, it just makes me miss dyeing so much. So this pattern doesn't actually have a name yet, but it's getting ready to enter testing, so I should really figure that out. If you have any name ideas for me, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what this sort of pattern brings to mind. I was thinking something like autumn walks or something autumn themed. And lastly, I thought I would talk about my most recent pattern release, or should I say releases, as there is in fact 3 of them. On the first day of fall, I released 3 colorwork beanie patterns, the first of which is the Happy Fall Y'all beanie, which just has some simple lettering and some cute little heart motifs on the front. That spells out Happy Fall Y'all, because it's that time of year again. And then on the back, it's just some simple chevron colorwork. Next up, we have the Cardigan Good Time beanie, which is this cute little jack-o'-lantern motif, and that goes all the way around the hat, so it's the front and the back. And it's got a cute little multicolored pom-pom. I thought about doing both pom-poms for these, but the more that I looked at them, the more I was like, you know what, no, I want this specific color for these, so I'm really happy I went with that. And finally, we have the It's a Pumpkin Season beanie, which is very similar to the first one in that it has some lettering on the front with little heart motifs, and then on the back it is the chevron colorwork, just like the first one. I absolutely adore all 3 of these beanies, and I'm so happy that these designs are finally out there in the world, and they're up. They're in Ravelry and Etsy. I've been working on these for so long that it felt kind of unreal when I was listing everything. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe these patterns are finally live. I love them. I will leave links in the description below where you can find these patterns as well as the rest of my patterns. Okay, and that brings us into works in progress. I'm not going to talk about everything I have cast on, as that'd be quite a long episode, but I will share the 2 that have been worked on the most this week and the ones that I'm spending most of my time with. Up first is this top-down pullover. I'm still a few inches away from the separating for the sleeves, but I thought I would go ahead and kind of give you an idea of what it's looking like here. So I have worked my way through the ribbing, and I am now working my way through the raglan increases. I'm still a couple inches away from splitting for the sleeves, so it doesn't look like much right now, especially on this small cord, but I am using my Knit Picks needles. These are, I believe these are called the options needles. I can't remember, but they have the purple cord. I don't know how well you can see that, but these are the options needles. I believe that they're the nickel-plated needles. Can't remember the name of them right now, but that's what I'm using. This is knit out of worsted weight yarn, and it uses size 7 needles, or a US 7 4.5 millimeter needle, sorry. And I'll give you a little sneak peek at the front here, which I'm really excited about. Okay. This is a design I'm hoping to release early next year. The original plan was the first week of January, but considering I haven't even split for the sleeves yet, don't know that the first week of January is going to end up happening after all. I was technically supposed to be done knitting this by September 15th if I wanted it to go live in the first week of January, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. There was a stitch pattern snafu. It's all okay. I'm here now. It's fine. But I am really happy with how it's looking, and I can't wait to have it finished. I'm going to wear this thing all winter long. Okay, the second work in progress that I'm going to talk about today is this beautiful lace cardigan. I'm so obsessed with this. I'm literally so obsessed. I think the camera's picking up a pretty good color. It might be, that's a little bit, yeah, this is more color accurate back here. But to show you the lace, I'll bring it up close. Just look at that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm absolutely obsessed with this whip. The yarn is so soft, and it's the drape on this. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and like the first sweater, I just cannot wait to be wearing this. I can't wait. I can't wait. It's gonna be so amazing. It really is. Once this is finished, I'm just gonna throw it on over everything and rock it everywhere I go, because I love it. I love it so much. So the yarn I'm using for this one is actually a Michael's yarn. It is Loops and Threads Wool Like in the golden yellow colorway. You'll have to excuse the state of this ball yarn. It's been in my stash for quite a while, but I'm finally getting around to using it, so that's nice. That's what the label looks like. And this is, I know it's mainly acrylic, but there is there's 15% nylon in here, which I think is where the utter softness and drape comes in. Like, seriously, that drape. I can't even. I'm so excited. I actually had this yarn left over from a project that my sister wanted me to make, and so it's been sitting in my stash ever since I finished that project, and I was like, there's enough yardage here to make a pretty decent sweater, even if I end up having to do 3/4 length sleeves instead of full length sleeves. So I thought, why not? I'm trying to use up my stash anyway, so why not make a sweater out of it? But this is just the perfect autumny color, isn't it? I adore it. I do. I really do. My original plan was to have this cardigan release next year at the beginning of fall, but because the coloring is like very autumn, but the more that I look at the stitch pattern, the more I'm like, this feels like a spring cardigan. But I don't really know, because I'm the type of person where I live, it's still quite warm during fall, so I'm the kind of person that would wear a lightweight lace cardigan through that transitional fall period, but I don't know that a lot of other people are. So let me know if this is something that you think you would wear during that transitional fall period, or if it's like, I would only wear this in spring or early summer where you live. Just curious, doing some market research. And that wraps up my whips for this week, so I'm just going to move into some general chatter. One thing I did want to mention is that some of the yarn that I'm using right now is commercial yarn, so it's more like big box store yarns. That's mainly because I'm trying to work through my stash. I'm trying to bring it back down to a manageable number. It got quite high up there, so I've been working through some other yarns. Like I talked about, I worked through my some of the last of my hand dyed stash, my own personal dyed yarn. So I'm trying to work through some of that big box store yarn stash at the same time, so it's not like, oh, let me work through most of my stash and I use up all of my lovely indie dyed yarn, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well now I want to make this, but all I've got left is this big box store yarn, and I really want to do this with indie dyed yarn. You know what I mean? Might as well use them both up at the same time. Once I kind of make a decent dent in my stash, I'll probably fill it all back up again, but it's the thought that counts, right? I'm just one of those people that gets super overwhelmed if I have too much yarn. It starts to be kind of like, oh, I don't know like what to make with this. It starts to stifle me creatively because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. There's too much. I can't think. So what I've actually been doing this year is I've been participating in the Stash Busters Cowl, which is hosted by Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast and Julie of the Twin Stitches Designs podcast. It has been such a fun knit along, and it's been a great motivation for me to use up some of my stash. Like, seriously, I finished so many projects that I'm like, I want to knit this thing, and we're going to make it happen, but we're going to use stash yarn because it's here, and we're just going to do it. And it's been really, really great because no more like, oh, let me go online and like look at 85 different colorways and decide which one I want to use. Now it's like, okay, go to your stash. What do you have? Okay, well, now you have 3 choices instead of 85. And it makes it so much easier for me to be like, this is what I'm doing. And working through my stash has just been, it's been really, really great to just see it slowly decrease. It'll be a while before I fully clear out some of it, but I'm really excited. Some of this was yarn I purchased when I was first learning to knit, and it's been in my stash forever. And I'm like, it's time to finally just use it up. It's time to use it up and say goodbye. And let's be honest, we all work from stash because we secretly want to be able to fill it back up again. Another thing I wanted to mention is that though this episode doesn't really reflect it, I really enjoy knitting socks. I usually have a pair cast on every month or so, and then, if it takes me a while to finish it, then then I end up having a project socks cast on every other month. It kind of just depends. But I usually have at least one pair on the needles at a time. I even have one now. It's a work in progress. It's a design. secret. It's going to be a mystery knit along at the end of the year, so it's not really in a position where I can show it without giving anything away, so stay tuned for that. I'm really excited for it. But I just wanted to mention the fact that I really enjoy knitting socks, because as soon as I get some of these designs off the needles and kind of like clear it and figure out where I'm at, I will be casting on more socks, and you will be seeing those in upcoming episodes. But as of right now, like I said, I don't have any that are in a position where I can show you them. And that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining me for this first episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, consider clicking the big red subscribe button below to be notified when I upload a new podcast episode. I'm aiming for a podcast every other week or so we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. There may be a podcast episode within the next 2 weeks here. I hope you've gotten some knitting done and kind of got to relax a little bit, and I hope that I will see you next episode. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye!